Hi there, Dave here again. Channels such as Grindhouse, Funhouse and Retro Reels have been showing off their Varèse Sarabande vinyl collections. So I thought I'd join in, hence the Varèse 35th Anniversary Concert Tour t-shirt. I thought I would split my video into two parts. Firstly, those directly Varèse branded, and secondly those licensed out to other labels for the European market. And I'm going to go through these in approximate chronological order of release. So let's start with the Varèse branded ones. First, from 1982, is The Sword and the Sorcerer by David Whittaker. Very typical artwork by Peter Andrew Jones there. I've got another copy of this licensed to the UK label TER, but we'll come to that later. Next up, from 1983, but looking much older because it's for a 1955 movie, is Magic Fire. This was a sort of biopic about Richard Wagner, so most of the music in it is his, but Eric Wolfgang Korngold came out of retirement to adapt and supervise the music, apparently because he couldn't stand the thought that some hack might do a bad job of it. Stylistically about as different as you can get. Here is Tangerine Dream's Near Dark from 1987. These first three were made in the US, but by 1990, the date of the next few, I think Varèse were winding down vinyl production in the States, so this probably marked the start of the licensing agreement with Colosseum Schallplatten in Germany. So the next few, although still branded Varèse, were actually made by Colosseum. From 1990, we've got a couple of sequels. Gremlins 2: The New Batch by Jerry Goldsmith. I was working in the local cinema when this came out, and I remember we had a 3D standee of that office desk artwork that you see on the cover there. The arm of Brain Gremlin was on a little motorised mechanism, if I remember rightly, and would bob up and down. Varèse have recently done a 2-disc expansion of this, which just turned up for me a couple of weeks ago, so that's that. But that's out of chronological sequence now, obviously, because that was 2018, something like that. Also from 1990, Predator 2, Alan Silvestri. Apparently this one is much sought after now, so I'm glad this copy is in good nick. And RoboCop 2. I think everybody agrees that this entry by Leonard Rosenman isn't as good as the original by Basil Polidouris, but it's still interesting. I picked this one up in Mars Plectrum Records in Peterborough for a tenner. Somebody's currently trying to sell one for 100 quid on Discogs. Good luck with that. Moving on to 1991, we have City Slickers, Mark Shaman. Really tapping into the spirit of the old Western scores by Elmer Bernstein there. People like that. Very nice artwork by John Alvin on the front of that. And Switch by Henry Mancini. I mean, obviously Henry Mancini, because it was a Blake Edwards film. Not the best work of either of them, I suspect, but hey ho. Then we get a hiatus of a couple of decades or so while vinyl languishes in the doldrums and CDs rule the world. I think Varèse restarted in perhaps 2013 or so. And the first one I got from this vinyl revival era is their 10-inch so-called V-disc, a sort of pastiche of the 1940s US military record label for Stephen Price's Fury. I've got his name right this time. 2016, we have John Wick by Tyler Bates and Joel J. Richard. This was a Record Store Day release. I've showed this in the previous video. From 2018, we have a red vinyl release of Carpenter and Howarth's score for Christine. Pairs off nicely perhaps with the Motown release of the song soundtrack, which I've already got. Am I allowed to say I'm not massively keen on this one? Oh well. And then 2019. Oh boy, this one. The Goonies was released as a film in 1985. It was a very popular songs album, but Score fans had to wait for ages for Dave Grusin's music. Varèse did a limited edition CD in 2010, but I missed that. Then in 2019 they trumpeted they were doing a limited edition Willie's Gold vinyl release. Only 750 copies. Of course, by this time the partnership with Colosseum was long since ended. But their international store based in England had not yet been established. So if you wanted it, you had to get it from the US. I wanted it. I knew it was going to be dear. So here it is. I've got number 206 of 750. Now the disc, well, it's 2 discs, cost $30. The shipping, another $23. And then I was clobbered by a customs charge of a further £25. So I ended up paying massively over the odds for this damn thing. What I didn't know at the time, because they didn't mention it, was that they were going to follow up their limited edition Willie's Gold vinyl release with a regular non-limited edition black vinyl release and then a CD reissue, which would in time be available internationally. My local HMV has currently got a copy of the CD on its shelves for about 14 quid, sticking its tongue out and laughing at me every time I go in there. That's the gold vinyl for that. So there we are. I suppose one small consolation is to see that other copies of this release are currently asking well over 100 quid on Discogs. Let me put that back in there. And finally, from 2021, is their facsimile reissue of the Empire Strikes Back Symphonic Suite. This is Charles Gerhardt and the National Philharmonic. I mean, who can resist a bit of classic John Williams? So, now on to Varèse recordings licensed to other labels, sufficiently for those labels to use their own branding. There are a couple via Colosseum. There was also obviously a deal with the British label That's Entertainment Records, known as TER. So first up is Prince of the City by Paul Chihara. This is from 1981. It's notable for not having the usual TER diagonal corner flash on the sleeve, so presumably they hadn't yet adopted that branding at that point. I got this for £2.50 at a record fair in Reading. Then from 1982 there's that other edition of Whitaker's The Sword and the Sorcerer. Artwork for this edition is by Brian Bysouth, I don't know how to pronounce that. And now the corner flash is present. 1983 there's James Horner's Brainstorm. Yeah, that's good. And John Morris's The 12 Chairs. I got that one in 58 Dean Street Records for £8. And then here's a Colosseum edition of John Carpenter's The Fog, hence the German text. Nebel des Grauens. This is apparently a repress, as it's got a barcode on it and the original pressing didn't. And what have I got? There's also a Colosseum edition of Maurice Jarre's The Bride, Die Braut. And from 1985 we have Elmer Bernstein's The Black Cauldron, and this one was licensed to a Spanish label, Vinilo, hence the Spanish title underneath the English one there. Tarón y el Caldero Mágico. Right, so now on to TER ones. From 1986 we have a TER release of Howard Shore's The Fly, with the iconic artwork of Richard Mann, and a copy of Hope and Glory by Peter Martin, one of those composers who appears to have done one film score and then disappeared into the background. There are details about several music related Peter Martins online, but I think this one was a violinist and music teacher from Yorkshire, and if it's the fellow I think it is, he sadly passed away in September last year. Also from 1987 is Angelo Badalamenti's contribution to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, Part 3 Dream Warriors. I bought this in Market Deeping Records. This is actually the only Elm Street score I've got. It's a bit of a shame really, because well, I don't think anybody would claim that it's one of the better entries in the series. It's a bit weak really. And lastly, Polydorus's original Robocop, and this one is the one with the slightly debossed metallic print on the letters of the title logo, both on the front and the back. Now I've got some CDs by Varèse too, but you know what, since some in this context means at my last count 320 something, I don't think it's worth me showing all of those. So that's it for those. Until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags. Ta-ra!